We look at what leaders do. But a key word, I think, at this level is the word let's. Let's implies a doing with relationship as opposed to a doing to relationship. So this model focuses on how do we do things with people as opposed to for people, as opposed to people. We found in our sensing of words, there's a difference between when people are done to and when people are done with. Some people say, yeah, there's a difference between when you're done in. That little preposition deals with relationships. And education is a delicate and precarious relationship between, with, and for people. The language we use is important. So I'm trying to get a language of let's, focusing on the interpersonal. The V deals with the whole issue of valued knowledge. What sort of knowledge do we value? And a key word, I won't go into a whole lot here, but a key word in development of knowledge is this simple little word here, the word if. The word if is the basis of science. If we tried this, what would happen? I don't know. Well, we set up experiments where we do this. In our work we've looked at. Okay, think in terms of if we did this. E deals with the fact taker. I have a relationship with myself, I have a relationship with other people, I have a relationship with knowledge, I also have a relationship with educational communities. And in terms of working with educational communities, I think the key word there is yes. What can we say yes to? There's some interesting work being done in what's called appreciative inquiry. We work with people and organizations, not about problem solving, but about what are you doing right? How can you do more of that? And you work with that. So what are we saying yes to? Some of the books on conflict resolution are called Getting to Yes. And the last thing is the yes. We also have a relationship to the larger society. At a time now where it's very, very difficult for people to talk to one another, I think it's very, very important that we use this word. Perhaps, as I said earlier about our daughter, that was the key word. I'm not sure people understand the seriousness of the word perhaps. Because when you say perhaps, you imply, if you're sincere, that there's something you agree with, but there's something you have questions about. And my notion, as we're trying to get to the simplicity on the other side of complexity, that we need to find ways to talk with one another. And so I would say, as a part of perhaps, maybe we should try this method for conversation. SPUR. Somebody will say something. First, silence. That's hard for me. I instantly think of 5 things that I've got questions about. No, keep quiet. Next thing. Perhaps. Find something that I agree with what they said. Someone gave me the real test of that. The question was, okay, say something you agree with here. George Bush is a good president. That was tough, but I found something. I won't say it now because it's an election. Then this is upon reflection. Upon reflection means you thought about it. This is something you agree with. And here's a further question that you have. Actually, with George Bush, I said, if you mean by goodness someone who's willing to take decisive action on events, he has done that. My question was, do you think decisive actions are the only criteria for deciding if someone is a good president? And is it important to be aware of background knowledge and possible consequences of events that you're doing? So the conversations can continue that way. So let me return to where we started. Looking at this thing called humanism. I say on the one hand it's simple. Humanism means working within the human perspective. Trying to find ways to save or understand and better the human perspective. Secular seems to mean, listen, we don't want to be trumped by a clerical card. We need to live in a pluralistic world where we can find ways to work and talk. The complexity. People have deep backgrounds dealing with some deep theological concepts. These can have strong psychological effects on them. We can think through and talk about these points. The points are obviously much more subtle, much more nuanced than I've laid out, but we realize there is a complexity. Our position, at least the position from pragmatic humanism that I emphasize, tends to focus on evolved embodied social problem solvers. Pluses and minuses with that. We're filling that in. The goal is ultimately for us to be able to live, I think, humanistic values, deepen our own experiences, by finding more in life that we can say wow to, finding ways as we work with people that we can work in doing with types of relationships, by using more if thinking in our own life so that we can look at other possibilities, by finding things as we work with people, what are we really saying yes to? Albert Camus talks about a rebel. And a rebel is someone who's saying no because a yes isn't being actualized. So we're trying to find, quite often, not just what we're against, but what's the yes beyond the no. And ultimately, as we work in complex issues that aren't going to be resolved easily, to have honest conversations where we can use sincere perhapses. Again, thank you very much for coming out on a very muggy evening. I hope I haven't put too much hot air into the environment, but I appreciate your attention, your time, and let's have some good questions and answers. And maybe we'll say perhaps once in a while as you're doing it. Thank you very much.
So as usual, we'll have people line up here at the mic for questions.
So what is your daughter doing now?
Sorry, as usual, we'll have people line up at the mic.
I'll just repeat the question.
Yes.
Or repeat the question. Our daughter is a scuba diving instructor. Yeah. And she likes to take me scuba diving because I have to keep quiet in the water. So it's very nice. Actually, I mentioned in terms of my article, one thing that this is a part of my wowness of life, that I appreciate underwater, and what I can appreciate about going underwater is, first of all, how beautiful it is, and how unique it is, but also how fragile it is. But also, I couldn't go underwater if it weren't for the technology, which enable us to create compressed air into tanks and the mass and things like that. So there is that. But she is a scuba diving instructor in Mexico. Right here, see how good a listener I am? I think the key element of that is that it needs to be realistic and positive self-talk. So that both parts have to be there. So you have to find something positive that is also realistic in what you're saying, not just deluding yourself.
So what would, I guess, classify than just feel good, useless talk?
I guess the notion would be to try to do an honest assessment of what happened. If you do poorly on an exam, some people tend to say, I'm no good at that subject, as opposed to, I didn't do well on this first test. Let's see what happens if I study differently and set up a different strategy. So the notion is, hey, I've done pretty well in other subjects. I think I can give this a try. I'm going to have to alter my strategy a bit.
Or I guess the feel-good kind of person would have just said that I'm good at that subject, the test wasn't right or something.
Yeah, but it tells you. But let me differentiate. I think a key element for me. There are some people who are pessimists, who say bad things have to happen. There are people who are optimists, who say good things have to happen. Interestingly enough, I'm neither one of those. I consider myself a meliorist. It's a key word, actually. M-E-L-I-O-R-I-S-M. Meliorism. And meliorism, I think, to me, deals with an energetic openness to positive possibilities, which give you a bigger horizon of meaning, which give you more to work with. But there's no guarantee that the good things are going to happen. You just have a better chance. So the pragmatism, he says, hey, let's go with the better chances. So I just wrote an article on passionate leadership. And people talking passionate leadership about these people have this irrational belief that good things can happen. It's not an irrational belief. It's basically a melioristic belief. They have a better chance of it. There's no guarantee. So I work with that perspective.
Okay.
But I think you're right. I think I find myself within smiles and other things. People say, oh, you think anything is possible? No. I want people to think. But I do think that we tend to use much more negativity than we have to. And our honest talk would say, I think we can find ways to improve if we try it this way. Let's see what happens. So I hope I've understood.
I think